And Christo, you heard McCarthy say very clearly over a year ago, Putin is a dictator, a murderer. He called him evil. While McCarthy's views appear to have obviously changed, Putin has not.
Well, I mean, if anything has changed, actually, Putin has increased his obsession with eliminating anybody who crosses his way through executions, through what they call neutralizations. Just a couple of days ago, Patrushev, who is the chief of security for the whole of the Russian regime, said that they've managed to neutralize more than 100 foreign spies. Now, mind you, they think of people that are part of the opposition as foreign spies. What we have found out in the last year, since that change of opinion, is that there's no reputation cost that anymore prevents Putin from going after opposition leaders, activists, journalists. Only in the last 6 months, we've investigated the suspicious poisonings of 3 women journalists, and there's nobody else who would be interested in their demise or in scaring them than Putin's regime. We've just found out that at least 2 other female journalists who work for important stories have been threatened and been surveilled over the last several months. They've been given very personal details about their movements, about that one of them had a threat message against their dog. This is all the functioning of a regime that is murderous, and I cannot imagine how somebody could have changed their opinion in the opposite direction in this last year.
And, in fact, with all the reporting that you've done, and obviously the extensive reporting on Alexei Navalny and the poisoning of Alexei Navalny by FSB agents, Putin's trying to put you on his list of neutralized people as well.
Well, indeed, and there's been a long-term surveillance on me, as I found out recently from law enforcement agencies in Europe. There's an ongoing investigation that probably very soon will become public, but I'm not allowed to talk about that.
Right.
But again, let's not talk about me. Let's talk about the dozens, and if not hundreds, of young Russian journalists who are actually surveilled and attacked. What we found out also is that the Russian regime has infiltrated a lot of the organizations of the Russian diaspora abroad. They're essentially embedding their poisoners and killers.
So since Prigozhin's death, right, and that one was, there was no attempt to cover that up, right? That's just, This is what we're going to do. There's been a lot of questions about Putin's inner circle, right, where people's loyalties lie, whether that is just going to shut up any kind of dissent or not. What's the latest that you understand?
Well, my personal understanding is that it's a prisoner's dilemma. It's a Mexican shootout. It's a term from finance, which essentially means that the people around him are scared that they will be purged, but they're waiting for the right moment to actually take control of their own destiny and their own safety. So there's a lot of anxiety in the circle around him. Who will be the next one to be taken to a house arrest and interrogated for a week or 2 to prove their loyalty? This happened with Surovikin, General Surovikin.
Right.
We discussed him on your show months ago. What we see now is that with Surovikin, who has a lot of political capital, a lot of admiration for him from the rank-and-file military, he cannot be just thrown out of a plane. He had to be taken into a position that makes him innocuous, that make him safe. So he was sent to Africa. But that will not be everybody's sort of way out. And that's why I think that there's a lot of tension that may result in people just trying to prevent or preempt their own purging by going after Putin.
But and exactly what are you saying? Are you saying you think there could be other attempts at going after Putin?
I believe it's more likely that there will be, exactly because of this fear of people being purged.
If they
wait too long,
they'll get killed.
They'll get killed.
Huh. So you think this could actually accelerate it, and you think that sentiment exists?
Yes, it does. It's just a matter of who will have the courage to act first.
Wow. In this context, is Putin? What is he doing with the war? You hear the Ukrainians, Fred, talking about they want more ammunition. They say that even with the aid they've received, that Russia simply still has more. Is Putin still accelerating the war?
Putin is accelerating the war. He has an interest in showing that even without Prigozhin, who was, let's face it, the more competent of the commanders he had, he can still show some progress, or at least slow the Ukrainian counter advances. But what he cannot do is continue with the current composition of his army. He has way too few people to actually take advantage and make use of this ammunition that they have in abundance. So I cannot imagine him continuing through the new year without a new mobilization, and that may be another internal dissent factor that we have to take into account.
He said something recently, 300,000 people he's going to call up. It's not going to be a problem. Do you buy it?
Well, it's not going to be a problem for him. I think it's going to be a problem for these people. Russia has lost a couple of million or maybe more young, callable people who left the country. So you're left with very few people who haven't taken the offer to get pretty high, well-paid contracts with the army, and now will have to be reluctantly drawn into a position. An interesting report by colleagues from the conflict intelligence team just a couple of days ago showed that a new called-up recruit lasts on average 4 months without being killed, before being killed. I don't think this statistics is very favorable to a new recruitment drive.
Wow. 4 months until death. And when we talk about the death toll caused by one person's decision to go ahead with this war. Thank you very much, Christo.
Thank you.